Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today I've got the Autobomber ready for you for 1.0. Kind of want to discuss in this video if you can level with it, how I think it's going to perform in 1.0, because I don't see any major changes really happening to it. And then from there, just go over how powerful it is as an endgame build, and just how good it still is in the game of Last Epoch. Of course, as the Autobomber, this build is really based around having Devouring Orb that's going to be orbiting around you, and then of course, it will also have Void Drifts going off every time an enemy dies. It'll shoot off its Abyssal Orb automatically, hitting enemies with that, and then at the end of its life, it does explode in a Time Rift as well. And then Smite will be for your single target damage while you're being buffed with Anomaly and running through maps really fast with Shield Rush, and Rebuke so that you can take almost any hit in the game with its massive amount of damage reduction. It's a really fun build for speed farming through the end game. You can go through maps extremely quick, especially in early corruption where you shield rush through enemies and they basically die instantly. And of course, if you get the right legendary items, you get some Ravenous Void Gloves, you can turn it into a very tanky build as well. In the current gameplay, we're playing at 500 corruption, and it's been a blast to play with the whole time. So let's go ahead and dive into the skills, the interactions, and just how it all works. For skills, I'm running Smite, Rebuke, Devouring Orb, Anomaly, and Shield Rush, and we have +1 levels to all skills thanks to our Weaver's Will item that gives +1 to all Sentinel skills, a pretty common item that you can find in the game. But first, for Smite, this is going to be our main single target damage skill that we'll be manually casting, so we got 3 points in Pillars of Light for that double cast chance, 5 points in Sacrifice to get 250% more damage out of it. This does sacrifice some of your current health, however, with 4 points in Atonement, we can offset that, and then 4 points in Deep Impact for a 100% critical strike multiplier for it. We are building towards 100% crit with this build, so this is a lot more damage for us. 2 points in Blinding Flash so that you can have a chance to blind enemies on hit, and then as well do more damage against blinded enemies. More modifiers will really boost your damage. And then 2 points in Holy Fire with 1 point in Emulate, and that's for that Spreading Flames chance along with the Ignite. 2 more sources that give us more damage thanks to the Mad Ladle that we are wearing, which allows us to get that % more spell damage per negative ailment on the target, so that's why we're built into those. However, if in the future they reduce the amount of ailments you can do or just reduce the damage or it's not worth it, or if you're not running the Mad Ladle, feel free to take these points out and definitely build into either more crit chance, you can build into more blind damage, or even to heal yourself if you'd like. For Rebuke, this will be used to reduce the damage of any big hits that you're anticipating. The default by Rebuke automatically gives you 80% damage reduction while you're channeling it, which is huge and the most you can get out of any skill in the entire game in Last Epoch. So channeling it will give you a huge damage reduction, allowing you to be hit by almost any skill in the entire game outside of just having straight invulnerability. We can even boost that further with 2 points in Regenerative Shell, we'll get some health regen, 5 points in Augmented Plating, so we have 125% increased armor, so we'll be even more tanky. 4 points in Brave the Elements for reduced elemental damage taken, so if that hit is fire, cold, or lightning, that immediately is going to reduce the damage even further. 1 point into Protective Legacy so that you keep the buffs after channeling. 1 point in Burst of Speed so you get some additional cast speed and move speed after you've ended it. And then the Solemn Vow with 3 points increases that buff duration. The last points go into Mystic Aegis for cooldown recovery so we can cast it more often, and 2 points in Bide so it can last longer so we can channel it for a longer period of time to really make sure that we take the hit and then get out of it. For Devouring Orb, this will be our second most damaging skill we have. It's also going to be for our AoE clear. These will orbit around you and then hit all of the enemies, and they hit for really good damage if you actually have a direct hit of the orb on enemies. So we have 1 point in Dark Moon, so it will orbit around you, 1 point in Abyssal Rush to give you increased movement speed, 1 point in Distant Satellite so they do more damage, orbit a bit farther out so you get a bit more AoE out of them. 1 point in Cosmic Impact, so they now have 80 flat void damage on impact, so it gives them some hit damage. 5 points in Extinction gives that collision damage 200% more modifier. This is huge for that hit damage to hit really hard. 2 points in Sightless Star for cast speed and mana efficiency. Again, you don't have to put these points here if you don't have any sort of mana issues, and you can put them elsewhere. We have 1 point in Void Adept for that mana regen, global more void damage. This is again doubled with 90 vitality. You'll be scaling a lot of vitality with this because every point of vitality does give flat spell damage to this skill, which is nice. However, reaching 90 is total end game, so it may take you a while to get there. 1 point in Hollow Orb, 1 point in Abyssal Emission, 1 point in Chaotic Torrent, and then 5 points in Crypt Car for that Void Pen, which is basically a 50% more modifier for us. And then the last point in World Rot for that Time Rot chance, which is an extra negative ailment on the enemies, so we can get a bit more damage out of it. For Anomaly, we have this set up to give us critical strike chance, more leech, and the time bubble will of course follow us everywhere we go, so we get those benefits inside of it. 1 point in Void Touched and 1 point in Immediacy makes you cast it and instantly have all of its effects go off. Then we have Time Bubble, 5 points in Decimation, gives us 150% increased critical strike chance while we are in Time Bubble, which we can have 100% uptime on this buff thanks to these points over here. Temporal Mastery increases that Time Bubble duration by 80%. By default, it lasts 5 seconds. This 80% duration puts it up at about 9 seconds. Then the Time Bubble persists for 2 seconds on effect. So if it disappears, you still get that for 2 seconds, which means you get the benefits for 11 seconds total. The cooldown on this is 12. However, while it's active, we have cooldown recovery, so you actually get it under 11 seconds, and that's how you get that 100% uptime of its effects. The 1 point in Time Lord allows you to cast it on yourself, and then the Time Bubble moves with you wherever you go. 1 point in Manipulation for that cast speed for us, and then 3 points in Time Eater and 1 point in Void Maul for some extra leech. And then Shield Rush is going to be our Zoom skill, the skill that we use to zoom across the map. You can channel it infinitely in a straight line as long as you don't run into anything. In order to use it without a shield, we go down to the bottom with some points in Consuming Path and then 1 point in Dark Rush, so that you don't have to have a shield. You can use it with a two-hander or like us while wearing a Catalyst. 2 points in Void Breaker for some extra hit damage, 1 point in Descend of the Void, and 1 point in Dark Regression just for some beams. It's just a little extra spell damage since we are scaling spell damage with everything. A little extra damage that comes out. 5 points of Rush Mastery for that mana efficiency. 2 points of Protective Speed so we take less damage while we are rushing. And then 3 points in Warrior's Entrance with the last point in Echoes of the Charge just for some hit damage at the end. It's not going to hit for very much in High Corruption, you won't even notice it. But it's there so that you can just get a little extra against the trash mobs, perhaps even get a kill with it. For passives, we've got 20 points in the base Sentinel class with 2 in Juggernaut, 8 in Fearless, 5 in Armor Clad, and 5 in Time and Faith. We do get this health and mana back every time we manually cast Smite. We have nothing in the Forge Guard and 6 points in the Paladin with all 6 in Defiance for that elemental resist, which is nice. If you want to use Sigils of Hope instead of Shield Rush or Rebuke, you can. It will require some more points in here in order to unlock it, but I decided not to go that route with this build. We went more defensive instead of offensive. And then for the Void Knight, we have 87 points, with 10 of them in Abyssal Endurance, 6 in Temporal Corruption, 6 in World Eater, 1 in Void Corruption, 8 in Void Bolts, 10 in Future Strikes, 5 points in Renouncement, which allows Smite to scale Vitality, so Smite's base damage for every point of Vitality will get +1 spell damage. This also works for Devouring Orb, which really allows those two skills to hit much harder. 5 points in Echoing Strikes, 10 points in Time Legion, 1 point in Avatar of Regret, 15 points in Dread, and the last 10 points in Eternal Form for that Vitality, as well as 20% increased health, which is really, really nice. For the character sheet, you can see here we're level 100, we've got just over 3,300 health. Again, you can get to about 4,000 health if you have really, really good rules. We have almost capped resistance, just missing a little bit of cold and physical, still trying to work those in as sealed affixes on the gear. We have 50% armor without any buffs going, and remember a portion of this will also affect dots thanks to one of the items we're wearing, but we'll go over that. For defense, you do want to cap out the endurance. I need to seal and affix to get that up, and then have your 100% critical strike avoidance. For the inventory, again, the main weapon is going to be the Mad Alchemist Ladle for that % more spell damage per negative ailment on the target. Again, this isn't needed for the build, but it really does boost the damage because we have so many negative ailments we're throwing in. In 1.0, some people have been rumoring that there's going to be a nerf to this. Whether it does or not, who knows. If it does, it could nerf the amount of ailments you could have. It might reduce the amount of more spell damage you get per negative ailment. They might change the more to increase this. They might nerf the damage of it somehow in some way. If they do, we'll have to test it, see if it's still viable. If not, you can always just switch to a crafted exalted wand or back to a two-handed staff if you like. All these other uniques are absolutely not needed. We have the Oshirion on just for the chill and shock chance, for the extra ailments, for the Mad Ladle. Same with the Siphon of Anguish. The Void damage leeches health is nice, but again, not needed. Crafting a Exalted Ring will do you a lot of good as well. The Erased Sentinel, this is a Weaver's Will item, is really nice. For us, it gives us increased void damage and void resist, which is alright, but the +1 to all Sentinel skills is huge, the increased armor is huge, and then the 24% of armor mitigation also applies to damage over time is really big for dots. So again, highly recommend this one. The better affixes you get with it, when you level up with it and get those Weaver's Will items, are really nice. Again, Shield Bash, we don't need it. Health Regen, we absolutely don't need it. You can definitely roll better stats, but just those base one stats that it comes with are really huge, and that's why I am wearing it. Same with the Swaddling of the Erased. You get % more spell damage to low health enemies. You also get increased cast speed, and then the +4 to all attributes gives you more vitality, which is base spell damage as well as health, which is really nice. As for the affixes on it, health is good, hybrid health would be better, cast speed is nice, area for area skills really isn't needed, but it does help Devouring Orb a little bit. But you can definitely get critical strike chance, or you can get critical strike multiplier, something more damaging. You can also run, if you wanted on it, another resistance. If you need, in our case, physical and cold resist would have been nice to get on it, but we didn't. Everything else, just get as much vitality. You can get increased void damage, spell damage on chest and helm. You can also get increased damage when a skill echoes. Those are going to be your most promising affixes. For idols, get vitality, increased void damage, echo chance when a skill echoes, and void damage. And then just vitality on every piece that you can. You can get it on the 1x2s, you can get it on the 1x3s. I, however, just have bleed on hit while at high health for that extra fix. Again, you can switch that out for vitality and get extra resistances and health if you need it with 1x1s and squeeze them in there. For how to play this build, I like to run Anomaly and Devouring Orb both on autocast, and how you set that up is in your settings. You will have to have a keyboard that has a keypad. Go into your settings, go into the change input keys, and under your abilities, just go ahead in the secondary slot, put in keypad 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whichever number you want to use for that. This is easy for me to remember as it lines up with your abilities across the skill bar. Once you've done that, with your numlock on, you just hold down the key. For me, I'm going to use 1 for Anomaly, turn numlock off, and then it acts as if you're holding it down. Once you turn numlock back on, you can do that for the second key, and it's basically acting as if you're holding down those keys. So every time they're off cooldown, they'll automatically keep going. That's how I like to run it. And then I just have to focus on shield rushing, rebuking when I see damage incoming, and smiting the single targets. And you can see here that we are critting for just over 100k on our echoes. They do the most damage for us. Our Rhaegor hits do about 50 to 100k. Our echoes do between 100 and 200k on hits. And then the Devouring Orb hits hit between 75 and 150k, depending on if the echo is a manual cast or an echo of one of our casts. Remember, the echo ones are going to do the most damage. We're still working towards getting to 100% crit. You can see quite a few white numbers in there, but as you get to 100% crit, it's going to feel much better. And you just, and the echo modifiers don't want to give enemies critical strike avoidance or chance to dodge. Outside of that, it's going to feel fine no matter which ones you run. But that's all you do for your single targets. Again, shield rush completely across maps, and then just throw down Rebuke whenever you're needing or anticipating a big hit coming in. But that's going to be it for this build guide. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm excited to play it in 1.0. It probably won't be the first build I go for, but it is a very good first build to go for if you're looking for something that doesn't require any uniques to get going. Again, none of the uniques on this build are required, but you can definitely scale into them at the end game. I've used it for a season starter a couple of times back in 9.0 drop to 9.1, and it's worked really well for me. That's going to be it for this build guide. I'm going to leave you guys with some gameplay. Let me know in the comments below if you plan on playing the Autobomber in the 1.0, or if you are going to be like me and stick with the Falconer, which is probably the class that I will start with, is just going a full dive bomb Falconer. But that'll be it. Leave you guys with some gameplay. As always, stay safe and have a good one.